Today's featured speaker, Jason Bitten, was head of communications for Chrysler Group from 2003 until 2007. Prior to rejoining Chrysler, where he began his career in 1983 in labor relations, he was head of communications for Ford Motor Company and Nissan North America. Vines formed his own communications consulting firm in 2013 and began a new career as an author. His first book, What Did Jesus Drive? Crisis PR in Cars, Communications, and Christianity, chronicled his time in the trenches during some of the biggest PR crises in corporate history. The book received ginormous. Actually, I looked that word up. It is a real word. I couldn't read. Ginormous accolades, mostly from Vines himself. It actually is his publisher's best-selling book today. It wasn't always a crisis Vines had to wade through, though. He led the PR launch of the Eagle Talon, the Dodge Viper, Jeep Grand Cherokee, and the LH cars from Chrysler and the Z sports car while at Nissan. Vines was named the Automotive Industry All-Star by Automotive News in 1999 and again in 2005 and 2006. Vines' second book, Jimmy Hoffa Called My Mom a Bitch, Profiles in Stupidity, is a compilation of his Detroit News political columns from 2010 to 2014. His third book, The Last American CEO, was a writing partnership with Joe Cappy, the last CEO of American Motors. His new book, tentatively titled Bitten, is the true story about the creation and launch of the Dodge Viper. It is the tale of a passionate group of Chrysler engineers that, despite producing a product that maybe never actually made a dime, helped in large part to save the company from recession. Jason is the Director Emeritus of the Automotive Hall of Fame, an organization he served as chairman for 2 years and one he hopes to be inducted in someday. But he's not holding his breath. Well, actually he is, because you basically have to be dead to be inducted. Many of you may also recall that he did a couple of the voices on the former Dick Burton show. I think he was Pee Wee Herman and Dr. Dwalkus. So maybe you remember that. Vines received his master's degree in labor and industrial relations from Michigan State University in 1984 and a BA with a double major in economics and communications/theater from Central College in Iowa in 1982. Vines is 59 years old and lives in that automotive mecca of Wilmington, North Carolina, with his wife of 32 years, Betsy, and their rescue dog, Sammy. He willingly admits he stalked Betsy while they both worked at Chrysler in Highland Park. But he wants you to know that he's never been arrested. The couple have 3 grown graduate children who thankfully are employed, have their own health insurance, cell phone contracts, and auto insurance policies. Please welcome today's featured speaker and NCRO member, Jason Vines.
Thanks, Mike. The Super Bowl joke about the widower reminded me of something my brother-in-law, Chris Theodore, said this morning. We were watching the news. I made him put on Fox, of course, and he about had a heart attack. But the commercial came on for A Place for Mom. How many people have seen those commercials with Joe in London? And he looks at me and goes, "Why isn't there a place for Dad?" Then, as I'm sitting there having breakfast, I read this Trip to the Holy Land, which I went on actually a few years ago with my wife. It's fabulous. And as I'm preparing this book, I've been talking with Roy Schoberg hour upon hour over the last couple of months. And so there's something missing here, because if there's a trip to the Holy Land, I think it starts at Roy Schoberg's house down in Florida. I just want to make that correction. I am in the midst of writing this book about the creation of the Viper. And this is not a car book. It's about the people. And I'd like you all to stand up if you're on Team Viper. Come on. I wrote the opening chapter, and I put it on Facebook not as a book. And within minutes, I get a call from Jake. Says, "Hey, can you come and speak?" I said, "Sure." I just started the book. But I hate when authors get up and read, but I want you to hear the opening chapter, because this is a book that kind of starts at the end and then works its way back. I don't know if you've seen the movie Upswing, or the Kevin Hart movie. Upside. Fabulous movie, by the way. But that's the way the movie starts. It starts basically at the end and then you come back. And that's the way I wanted to do it. So if you'll allow me to just read my first chapter of the book. The chapter 1 is called Tool Time, a Puck, and a Viper. It was late October 1991 and our Chrysler Corporation was running on fumes. We had hope, but as we all know, as a business cliche goes, hope is not a strategy. But we had a car with, well, gonads and ovaries. Inclusive enough? It was a Dodge Viper. The redo of the great cash cow Chrysler invented minivan was many months away, led by my future brother-in-law, Chris Theodore, as was a reinvented Dodge Ram pickup, replacing its 20-something-year-old grandpa version. The Chrysler PR team, led by the late Tom Sensational Kovaleski, had gathered in Beverly Hills, California, at the posh Peninsula Hotel in preparation for the media ride-and drive of the Red Beast. Kovaleski had almost single-handedly turned automotive press previews on their ears. Great hotels, great food, but all inspired to give the media a memorable experience they would not forget. Oh, crap, I was redundant there. Months before, Kovaleski and I were checking out driving routes in Southern California for the November event. Why not Michigan, our home? Simple, crappy roads, especially in the winter, as we prepared for a November press preview. We checked out the poshest hotels, including new hipster digs. We had breakfast at the white-hot Mondrian Hotel in Sunset Strip before checking out the rooms with the sales agent. At the next table on the open-air patio was one-hit wonder Gerardo Mejia. You may or may not remember his song, Rico Suave. Remember that song? I didn't ask for his autograph. Why? The song sucked. But Kovaleski and I were now elite until the bill came, and we knew our boss, Steve Harris, would kick our butts, blowing money we, as a staff and a corporation, didn't have. Note, 1 year later, Chrysler was bleeding so much cash that we changed our logo from a Pentastar to the image of the hemophiliac son of the late Russian Tsar, Nicholas. Oh crap, I just made that up. I let Kovaleski, my boss, pay the bill, and I went to the front desk to meet with the manager who promised to show us rooms. As I stood there, a fairly short but stocky dude arrived with a large guy, obviously a bodyguard. The former was comedian Sam Kinison, who had just driven in from a gig in Vegas. A huge fan, I offered my hand for a shake, which he accepted. I could have used a bottle of Clorox at the time, because Sam was, well, ripe. Sadly, he would die just a few months later in a head-on collision on another return from Vegas to L.A. Sorry for the bummer moment. We finally settled on the majestic Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills. Several years later, I was once again in the Peninsula Hotel having breakfast with former Chrysler Chairman Lee Iacocca, Nissan Sales President Mike Sergi, and former Reagan Communications Chief Mike Deaver, trying to convince Iacocca in a failed attempt to becoming the new Nissan pitchman. That story is told in full glory in my first book, What Did Jesus Drive? Crisis, PR and Cars, Communications and Christianity, available in all forms on Amazon.com. Prior to the media coming in, our fabulous Viper engineers, who could only be described as either Kelly's Heroes or the Dirty Dozen, were getting the cars ready for the media in the garage below the hotel. We had a whopping 4 cars. 2 days before the event would start, I called my friend Tim Allen. Yeah, that Tim Allen. TV Guide was proclaiming Tim's upcoming show, Home Improvement, would be the smash hit of the year. A couple of years before, I had warmed up, not sexually, Tim as he restarted his comedy career after a stint in prison on drug charges at B's Comedy Kitchen in downtown Motown. It was my first paid gig, but Tim was no stranger to comedy. Luckily, I got to be his send-up many times later in Ann Arbor and Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle in Royal Oak. In L.A., I called Alan, a huge car guy, "Hey, want to drive the Viper?" I believe was his reply. He made his way down to the hotel, and we jumped into one of the 4 vehicles and blew out of the entrance. And the transmission blew apart within a half a block. Not sure if it was Tim shifting on the manual transmission of the car. It didn't matter. I walked back to the hotel, grabbed a couple of Viper engineers, and got a new Viper. We were off to the first dinner site for the incoming media, the now famous Spago restaurant, and famed chef Wolfgang Puck. Alan pulled the car into a parking spot on the uphill street just outside of Spago to an awaiting Wolfgang. We got out of the car and shook hands as I talked to Puck about the several ways of journalists coming in for our event and the dinners at the restaurant. As I was talking, Tim Allen kept spouting in a high voice, "Wolfgang Puck! Wolfgang Puck!" Finally, and I'll edit this, I whispered in his ear, "Effing stop it." I gave the keys to Wolfgang and let him and Alan take a 30-minute drive up Mulholland Drive and back to the restaurant. Without accident or injury, they returned, and Tim and I continued on, heading west on Sunset. At a stoplight, people in a convertible alongside started pointing at us, shouting, "Hey!" The tool man, I assumed, thought they were looking at him, the next biggest thing in Hollywood. After all, he was getting the press you can only dream of. And the hype turned out to be real, by the way. Finally, one of the occupants of the vehicle says, "Is that a Viper? How'd you get it?" Tim was bummed, but I was on top of the world. Alan graciously attended the first night for dinner for each of the 4 media groups, 14 to 18 automotive and lifestyle journalists we invited to the press ride and drives. Tim shared his love of cars with the journalists at dinner. One journalist, late Jim Mateo of the Chicago Tribune, a curmudgeon of a guy desperately and unsuccessfully trying to hide his heart of gold, said it was the greatest dinner of his life, with great food and a very funny car guy in Tim Allen. To this day, I was just hoping Wolfgang Puck never spit in Tim Allen's salad. And now, how the story began. A group of renegades who created the crudest, most magnificent, company-saving product in the history of business. So that's how it starts. I'm about halfway through, but I just want to share some. I want this book to be very funny, factual, but a great read. And one of the early funny stories is about the time that I was named to be the PR guy, and I was fairly young then, for the Viper. They also put in place a man named Jean Malbé Vacour. I had not met Jean, but he called my office. He goes, "Hello, Jason." I go, "Yes." He goes, "This is Jean Malbé Vacour." Are you the new guy? I go, "Yeah, I'm the new guy." He goes, "Donnez le suite du soir." What? Je le suis du soir. Thinking, I'm going to get fired. "Hey, can you do that one more time? We have a bad connection." He goes, "Je le suis du soir." And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Yes." I go, I meant no. "Okay, I'll see you later." This was such a treasure to work with this team. I talk about this press preview out in California. A couple of weeks prior to that, we were at New Mac, and we were presenting the marketing plans and the PR press view plans to a group that included Tom Gale, Francois Casting, let us focus beyond the shit metal, as he used to say. Marty Levine was there. Kovaleski and I were there. And we were going to give our pitches. Now, a week prior, I was out at the Proving Grounds with Neil Hanneman. And we were shooting a movie. Because we wanted to show a movie to the journalists when they got into the room that talked about what the Viper was all about. And Neil was thrashing this Viper around Black Lake and everywhere, and making the wheels smoke without any nitro or whatever you put on the wheels. It was just fabulous video. Started with a magic carpet ride. So you saw the thing coming in the distance. Well, at the end of the day, I got in the car with our filmmaker, Bill Delaney. And I was driving, and he has a camera right in my face, and I had my Jack Nicholson glasses on. And I said, looked into the camera, and I said, if you can't get laid in this car, you're uglier than effing E.T. And yeah, I used the F word. We included that in the version we were showing to the management group. So Gail, Marty Levin, and Bob Sadly Lutz. Well, the marketing guys go first. Not a shot at you marketing guys, but the marketing guys had the typical video. The bungee jumping, this is what the customer will do, blah, 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 blah.
We had legal parameters.
Yeah, and good taste. But we said, here's what's going to happen when the media comes to California. They're going to check in, the bellhop is going to take them to their room, he's going to offer them an American beer, an American wine, and he's going to put the videotape in and make them watch it. A clean version of the videotape. Well, so the marketing guys do their thing, and it was crickets, just crickets. Then we do our pitch, and Kovaleski and I go through what we're going to do, and then we throw in the videotape, the R-rated one. And when it was done, Lutz stood up and goes, "That is what I am talking about." 2 weeks after our press preview, which was fabulous, some journalists said it was the greatest one they've been on. Actually, we topped it a few years later with the Viper GTS in Europe. I'm in my office, and some redheaded dude, engineer, named Herbie Helbig, comes in and goes, "Hey, I'm doing a father-daughter show and tell at school. Can I have the Viper tape?" If you've ever been in my office, you know I'm a mess. I go, and he's thinking the one that we showed the media, the PG-13. I go, yeah, it's right over there. So a couple days later, Herbie, how old was your daughter?
She was in third grade.
And so Herbie, a day or two later, is at her school, and he brings a Viper, and the kids get a look at the Viper, and then they get to talk to him, and then they go into the classroom. And so Herbie now wants to show this video, and he puts it in and starts it up and goes to the back of the class. And it's so cool. Steppenwolf, the smoking kids are going, "Ooh, this is cool." And then my image comes on the screen. And Herbie was like in those movies where it's, no. I think you got to the stop button when the first part of the F word came out. Herb was later arrested. I'm sending a note out to many of the Viper team members, most, in the next few days, asking them to contribute. Because this book is going to be signed by Jason Vines and Team Viper. Because again, I want to tell the story of what this team did against all odds. It was the most exciting thing I've ever done PR-wise in my life, and I really want feedback. So, for Team Viper members, when you get the note, encourage your fellow people, your fellow team members, to work with me. all the money that I make from this book, which could be just hundreds, I'm going to give to my favorite charity in town. Well, I have two favorite charities, but Forgotten Harvest. And speaking of Forgotten Harvest, I want to thank Bill Gollins for being here. 2008, I was on the board of Forgotten Harvest. I'd been on the board for, 5-6 years. Our economy was in the crapper. And I went to Bill and I go, I need some help. He goes, I got to tell you how many people are coming to me. How much do you need? And he wrote a check on the spot, a personal check. I really just want to, I like to talk more about the book, but it's a work in progress. And again, it's a part of the team. But I would like to have any questions you might have about anything, rather the book or what's going on in the auto industry. I mean, a couple of people are saying, what do you think going on with Carlos Ghosn? I'm going to tell one more Viper story real quick. We were launching the Dodge Stealth, and we were in Sedona. And at a reception after the first ride and drive, we had the concept Viper whisk by real fast. And then a minute later, the production Viper came back. And the media said, do you see that car going back and forth? I go, yeah, we saw it. They go, one was the concept, one's the production. And we put them side by side. And they were really impressed with that. Well, the next day, we had some old timers in the media group, and we gave them cars to drive, not Vipers, but Stealths. And Kovaleski and I were driving on the route, following after they all got on the road. We would always do that, leave 20 minutes later. And about a mile from the Enchantment Resort we were holding this, we peered to the right, and there were 3 Stealths in the parking lot of a golf course. These guys aren't driving our cars, they're playing golf. So as characteristic as what we always would do, we'd always keep a key behind the license plate. So we took the cars back to Enchantment. And so they had to call us when they got done with their round of golf. What? Were the cars stolen? Oh no! So that's how much fun has been involved with the Viper and how many great stories we have. Pete, do you have questions?
Anybody with a question on this side? Sorry, Jason, I couldn't resist.
We'll open it up. We'll open it up to questions for Jason, for Jay. Any questions you may have. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, do you have any idea how much longer it's going to take you to finish that book?
Okay, Newman. Actually, I hope to be done by the end of April. But I do want to get the input from the team. Give them at least a couple months to give me stories. There are so many stories. And it's going to actually end, I said the book begins at the end. There's actually one final chapter about the launch of the Viper GTS in Europe, which many journalists to this day says was the greatest press preview they've ever been on. We started at the Nürburgring, then went to Spa, and then Reims. At the Nürburgring, along the way we had the late Phil Hill and Jesse Alexander, the famous photographer. At the dinner each night, they'd talk about how he won Formula One and blah blah blah. The first day at the Nürburgring, we let the media thrash the cars around for a couple hours, and when they were done, I decided I would take a ride in it. And so, when the top speed was what, Herbie, 165?
Oh, it was over that, 185.
Okay, I thought it was 165, but whatever. I'm alone, and I'm on the back stretch of the Nürburgring, and I thought, I've never gone this fast in my life in a car. And so I got up to 165 as I was about to enter the curve. And so I applied the brakes, and they were not in existence. So I went into that curve downshifting as fast as I could. I did soil myself. I somehow got through, got up to the paddock and said, this is dead. But we only had one accident on that whole trip. And at the wheel was Phil Hill. And at first he kind of said, no, there was a problem with the brakes. And then a minute later, I just screwed up. But he was very gracious, though, he and Jesse and the media. If you can probably go, I think you can still go online and buy the press kit. Because right after the launch, we found them on eBay or whatever, press kits that we gave to journalists. So asking $4,000 for the press kit. Unbelievable. Question?
Jason, one comment on your story with Tim Allen and blowing the transmission, and I think I remember this right. 6-speed transmission, fifth gear is up and to the right, and just a little to the right of that is reverse. So when you do the 4 to 5 shift, at that time it was kind of easy to kind of go through reverse first, okay? And there were some things going around at that time. It's kind of like, well, anybody that shifts from fourth into reverse doesn't deserve to drive this car. Yeah, right. About a month later, we put in the reverse interlock, so you couldn't do that. So in Tim Allen's defense.
Well, the other thing we learned out when we were doing the press preview is the tailpipes. What was wrapped? Kevlar? What were they wrapped with for the heat? Huh?
Yeah, they had some kind of magic insulation.
Yeah, and supposedly you're supposed to use one wrap. We had 4 on. And after the first drive, before the media got in, we brought the cars back. We were doing the routes, so we come back into the garage at the Peninsula, and they take the side seals off, and all the material has evaporated. And later, Frank Casting got a third degree burn. He was standing next, burned right through his suit, if you remember. But I remember in the days leading up to the press preview, we were driving down to Newport Beach, and we were on the 405. Donna Colt, my secretary, and I, and traffic, bumper to bumper traffic in California. I thought I was going to pass out. It was so hot, but it was crude. But God, what a magnificent thing, and just to drive it around. You didn't look like a jerk driving it. Just people go, that's cool.
Wasn't a K car.
No. But he probably had some K-car parts.
Yeah, somewhere. Parts for everybody. Any
Ignition system was a kid.
Hi. I don't know if my memory serves me right, but I have a recollection there was a society writer that lived in Bloomfield Village, Linda Solomon. That name ring a bell at all with you?
Linda Solomon?
Yeah.
I thought she was a photographer.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
She was loaned a Viper early on and managed to flip it in the village because she'd never driven it before, didn't know what would happen when she put her foot on the accelerator.
Nor did any driver.
You don't have any recollection of that?
No, I don't. And she's a very nice person. So I don't remember that at all. Not at all. I mean, we actually had very, very few incidents with the media, with the vehicle. I think partly out of fear. But it was a handful. But it got so much better over time. So much better over time. Now, I didn't finish my story on the GTS because after Reims, we drove from there to Paris, and we got there in the mid to late afternoon. 13 Vipers. My wife and I are in one, and we are all on fumes. And we went around the Arc de Triomphe 3 times in rush hour traffic. But the world stopped there. And then we drove down the Champs-Élysées and came back, somehow got back to the hotel. But we would have probably been arrested if we would have ran out of gas or run out of gas. Questions?
I can speak without a mic. Weren't the tops flying off the first production? I remember opening up a meeting with my vice president, Tom Pafford, who says that the cars go 185 but the tops go 120.
Repeat that. That's too funny.
No, my question was the tops flying off the early production. One of my VPs opened up a meeting one time back in the day saying that the cars go 185 but the tops go 120.
Just wasn't launched correctly.
We also had, what was the funky stuff on the dashboard? They tried something new. What? Oh, yeah, that lasted a day and a half. And they tried. So, anybody else? And I have to admit, I haven't paid my dues.
You said it, I didn't say it.
Yes, you said it when I walked in the door.
All right, I didn't run.
I will pay my 25. It's $25, right?
$25.
You take stamps?
A year. It's 25 a year.
We'll turn it back on.
Oh, okay. And I'm sorry we couldn't get Roy. Hello. I'm sorry we couldn't get Roy. I've had a ball talking with him over the last couple months, and he was the one that insisted, "Hey, when the book's done, will you say by Jason Vines and Team Viper?" I go, "Absolutely." So he's thrilled by that, and we'll continue to talk. And again, I hope everybody buys it, and I hope to have it out in the fall, and I hope you all buy like 100 copies. But as I said, this is not a car book per se. It's about the people. Yeah, the car is obviously a major point, but it's about the people who all took a chance, by the way. I think the whole team was volunteers. They could have destroyed their careers had they screwed it up. Well, Herb did destroy his career. But and it's been a pleasure to start writing this, and it's so funny that I just went on a whim and put this one story on Facebook. I thought for the heck of it, and I get the call, and I got an outpouring of people saying this is a great story. You got more? I go, yeah. I just started writing a book about it. So the title is a work in progress. So I think I'm going to stick with Bitten, but I go ahead.
No, I just had a quick question. Who conceived the Viper? Who was the father of the Viper? Was it?
Lots of fathers.
It was Bob Lutz.
Draw that car on everything. Do you have any of those drawings?
No, but I have the design, the artist rendition of the original.
Okay.
That was signed by. We gave them out. We had an event in California, I think, with the concept vehicle, where Zora Duntov was there, James Garner was there, and we had the what do you call it? The painting, and all the fathers of the Viper signed it, including mine. I got signed. It was signed by Lutz, Castang, Gale, and Shelby. And I was lucky enough to also get Jay Leno's signature on it, James Garner, Sam Posey, and unfortunately, those things fade a little bit, but I've got it as protected as I can. And I still have a couple of Viper press kits that haven't been opened. So, yeah. But it's kind of cool. I'm very, very proud of what we were able to accomplish from a PR team. That was because we were embedded with the engineering team, who treated us like blood brothers and blood sisters, and would do anything for us. So that's why this one's actually, I'm enjoying writing this book more than the first one, because the first one being completely ADHD. It is so difficult to write a book. You just got to sit down and maybe 12 hours at a time write it, and your head starts hurting. Seriously, you get a headache from looking at the screen and so forth. But I had a dog next to me, Sammy, and this is, what's the day today? National Dog Rescue Day or something? Yeah. So Sammy got me through it. And the other books have been really easy to write. So, and this one is, because I need to rely on the team, I have to piece it together. I mean, I have the outline, and I've written 6 chapters, but I need to figure out what's incoming and how I can tell a cohesive story that's enjoyable for people that love cars and even those that don't love cars. Because this is, as I said, this is bigger than a car book. This is a story of how a group of renegades, I don't call them renegades, saved a company with a vehicle that never made a dime except with jackets and hats and pen sales. Thank you all for coming.
Jason, before you know the story about the photo I've got up on the board?
No, I do not. Why don't you tell us?
This is one that Roy wanted to talk to. Apparently, there was something about the Viper that they did on an aircraft carrier with, I believe it was Bob Hope. And this is one of the admirals that was responsible for that carrier. They never let alcohol on any naval vessel. He authorized alcohol to be available that day, and they got him dead to rights with this image, and Roy's rather proud of that. So I guess he got a chance to meet Bob Hope that day and was duly impressed.
How many guys fell off the ship later?
That I don't know, but I do. He said something about the catapult that I just stopped there.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I remember we did the Intrepid on the Intrepid in New York.
And it may have been the Intrepid. He didn't tell me what carrier it was on, but apparently it still required authorization. But and I don't know who the admiral is that's on the skip.
A lot of people do stupid things on these ships. Remember when Michigan State played North Carolina, and the floor got so wet. Yeah, and their players getting killed. This is dumb. Do it on the roads. That's what they're for. Speaking of which, the roads may be crappy this afternoon, and it's that way every time I come back here. But I love coming back in Michigan. When you go away from here and you come back, it is a scary place to be because you people drive really fast. I mean, you go to I-275, it's 90 miles an hour, bumper to bumper. I call my wife, I go, I'm scared to death, honey. I am scared to death. I remember we had a place in northern Michigan, and on the Sunday night when everybody come home, it's 85 miles an hour, bumper to bumper. It's just, and the roads are so good here. Yes, is that what the governor said? It's wonderful to see so many of my friends and colleagues. I appreciate Jay reaching out to me. It's nice to come home. It's nice to see my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. Unfortunately, we don't have any parents to come back to, but it's great to see your faces. And Chris and I later today are going to start a company called A Place for Dad.
Thank you very much, Jason. That was fun.